Hello, welcome to the Self-Learning Podcast by Dr. Sushma Singh. Let us start discussion on Unit 3, Contextual Dimensions of Democratic Decentralization, Social, Economic and Geographical. And our topic is Impact on Urban Sociology. As could not be denied, we are facing today urban crisis as per the following. The massive of scale migration from mostly rural to urban centers as a consequence of pull and push factors and the fundamental right of the people to settle in any part of the country could not be overlooked. This, coupled with the population explosion, has posed a colossal problem for urban administration, much beyond the resources which could possibly be mobilized to address the issues involved. Slums and squatter settlements have mushroomed, where about 50% of urban population lives in dehumanizing conditions, especially the poor and the disadvantaged population, including women and children in particular. The combined phenomena is referred to as over-urbanization by sociologists, which denotes excess demand over capacity in urban areas, which create problems of space and assimilation in urban setting. To tackle the problem of mushrooming slums, governments allot large proportion of scarce resources to social investment at the risk of productive investment. Abraham states that there are further problems caused like internal disorder, political unrest and government instability, fed by mass misery and frustration in the urban setting, and himself adds inadequacy and ineffectiveness of infrastructures to plan for and provide health and welfare services. Education. To absorb the extra labor force, governments are forced to adopt labor-intensive techniques of production, which hampers technological development in the country. Housing for all is a basic human right, is a far cry despite government's intervention by setting up housing board, city development authority and other local self-government agencies. Unauthorized colonies come up, which pose serious hazards for the environment and difficult policy choices for the government. Environment of the conflict creates disorder in that pressure groups develop around rationally policy processes and press for vested interests. Subversion of the electoral process and rule of law and the rise of particularistic demands are direct consequences of this state of disorder. Lack of essential services like potable water supply, sewage and drainage, collection and disposal of garbage are the main cause of great health hazard to urban people, and due to paucity of financial resources, urban administration has not been able to ensure proper sanitation, hygiene and healthy living for the urban people. Inadequacy of power supply, roads and bridges, transport, communications has come in the way of economic development of cities in many ways. Particularly industrialization are called the engines of growth. Pressure of demand causes over exploitation of natural resources. Acute environmental degradation has occurred in many urban centers, particularly in the metropolitan centers having more than million plus population, adversely affecting the health of the people and threatening their very existence. Unsustainable urban development has also been the bane of urbanization in our country, arising out of inappropriate techniques, outmodeled and outdated regulatory measures, and lack of foresight and comprehensive perspective of development, which have vitiated rural urban balanced development, conservation of indigenous resources, ecological imbalance, and destruction of nature. The problem of socio-economic exclusion of marginalized sections such as women, children, and the backward castes in economic development. Post-liberalization is another sociological problem to be tackled via policy in these regards. Urban sociology, by above enumerated concerns, characterizes therefore chaos and inhuman living conditions for the majority of the urban poor. The major issue at stake is improvement of urban infrastructure. Also, in an environment of deprivation, lawlessness, and cultural deterioration are most likely to result. To pre-attempt the undesirable social condition, the people need to be involved in choices that concern them. Endorsing the point to quote from Economic Survey 2003-4, read in Thomas, international experience suggests that without reforms in the institutional framework for urban infrastructure, Center for State level government funds directed into the urban sector will not have the expected economic or social returns. On the contrary, the urban sector could make larger fiscal claims when faced with acute problems of infrastructure or poverty, and thus exacerbate India's fiscal problems. The institutional reforms are identifiable as the strengthening of urban local bodies (ULBs) as provided under 74th Amendment to the Constitution, the strengthening and further diversification of community structures so that the people right down to the grassroots level have representative bodies through which they can intervene in social and economic activity. This may not be possible without strengthening the urban local bodies. First and foremost, there is a need to strengthen their resources base to improve service delivery on their part. Charges on public utilities have been regressive in impact. That is, the poor have ended up paying more than the rich. The failure to collect appropriate user charges is actually failure to make the rich pay equitable for use of public utility. The problem lies in how these services are run. In the past, when municipal functions were few and the pressure on infrastructure was not that much, local bodies could meet the cost of water supply from general revenues, and property owners were assured of free water supply up to an agreed level. It has been hard to get the rich to pay in the first place, and that at a heightened rate, because effective demand has gone up. as the quality of the services has not improved and prospective payers have put service quality as a condition for more charge. However, quality can improve only when there are resources, and people have been unwilling to pay more, creating a vicious circle of inadequate capacity and poor service. Also, as stated in the 10th Plan 2002 to 2007, in small and medium towns especially, water supply and sewage services do not fetch sufficient revenue to cover overall expenses. There is no matching of revenues against expenditure. Collection efficiency is low, tariffs are low, resulting in direct subsidy. Institutions dealing with water supply and sanitation have very little autonomy on personal and financial matters. Informal systems necessary for effective management are generally lacking. Responsibility is shared between a multiplicity of agencies, namely the state level board or department or corporation, with little initiative coming from the ULBs. Funds from the financial institutions like HUDCO depend on the state's willingness to share the project cost and guarantee the loan on behalf of the ULBs. Here we want to wind up the session and take rest. Thank you very much for engaging yourself with the Self Learning Podcast.